experts and doctors in Ayush system of medicine present here, the students, distinguished invitees, friends from the media. I am truly delighted to see an assembly of eminent Ayush experts, practitioners, philosophers present this day in our Bharatiya Mandapam. Ayush, yes, we heard the eminent persons from all these disciplines explaining their potential, what they are doing and what they can do. And also the need for adequate recognition and encouragement. We all know that this traditional system of medicines have taken care of the humanities for long time before the advent of modern medicine. Modern medicine is certainly not very old, but at the same time, the way the modern medicine has grown and the way they have been addressing the problem of humanities, it has acquired a place of preeminence in our healthcare. No doubt, there are many areas where we don't see alternative, at least that is how the perception is, to modern medicine. But the fact that these traditional medicines have, or a traditional system of medicines, I should say, they have taken care of the humanity for such a long time. They have emerged after a long period of experiment and experience. They should not be overshadowed or should not be marginalized by the modern science or modern medical science. There are a lot of wisdom, a lot of merit in our villages. We know we have a representative of the Irula tribe here, meeting the needs of health care or medical care in certain situations to the people. In our villages, we used to have experienced people to whom we used to rush in time of need, and they used to help. And this knowledge to some extent also had filtered down to our mothers and grandmothers. They also used to treat us in time of need. And many a times they used to be successful. The advent of modern science, not only medical science, but science as such, has preeminently occupied the space in such a manner that the traditional knowledge system, traditional wisdom, including traditional medicines, were eclipsed. I think this is not good for humanity. While we embrace the modern, we cannot and we should not lose the traditional. And the fact that there are areas where even like a modern medicine also has its own limitation and severe limitations too. And most of us, we have our own experience where the traditional system of medicines have helped us when the modern medicine did not show the way out. Actually, the problem that we are facing today in the world and more so in our country, I won't say more so in our country, because our country, we are saying that because our country we have a very strong and robust system of Ayush. People have been practicing for thousands and thousands of years. In our own land here, we know that many of Tamil Nadu, when we see that we have a relatively more vibrant system of Ayush, traditional medicine system, primarily also because we have so many siddhas and yogi who were born on this land, whether it is Tirumular, whether Patanjali, so many of them. So it is natural that this traditional medicine system remains more vibrant. But the problem that actually we all face, and so is the challenge before the Ayush community, is also that while our medicines work, often a question is asked, how does it work? What is the mechanism? How does it work? And often a demand is made to prove it. Now, when the demand comes for proving it, then standards which are put to test, how to prove it, proving it by the standards of modern science. Now here to me it appears, there is a fundamental difference. Because while the modern medicine looks at the body essentially as a machine, you have automobile, a car, some part goes and you fix it. So if I have a knee problem, replace the knee, if you put something else. If I have a cardiac problem, put a stent, clean it. By and large, suppose if there is a kidney problem and all, suppose, okay, replace the kidney, get a donation. So fixing the parts, looking at the body as a machine. And it works in many ways, it works wonderfully, but it works up to a point, but it also has its own effect, side effect. Whereas the traditional system of medicines, it takes the body as a whole. It's a body, mind, spirit, or chitta, whatever you may call it. It is a combination, and people have spoken, experts have talked about holistic approach. This holistic approach has to have its own grammar, its own way of proving it. It cannot, and here lies the challenge which I often find, and I have a limited interaction with this people in this discipline, experts. But usually I pose a question that why don't we create a, why? Because there is a tendency on the part of traditional medicine practitioners to prove it on the argument or on the basis, on the premises which modern science does, the modern medicine does. Modern medicine treats it as a matter. Body is not just a matter. It is a matter, mind, spirit. This, now they are slowly and slowly getting into it. When it comes to people are talking about you are stressed to go for yoga. Even now the doctors have, modern medicine doctors have also started recommending, go for meditation. New disciplines are coming, the psychiatric discipline, all this, this behavioral psychology and all those things, behavioral psychology therapy. They're all trying to grapple with the emerging challenges which the modern medicine is facing, but the basic grammar remains the same by analytical, by looking into parts and parts and parts. But holistic approach to health and well-being. Because in the traditional system, it is not just a treatment of an ailment, but its focus is on the well-being. In the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Delhi, their logo is Sarira Madhyam Khalu Dharma Sadhanam. Sarir is the madhyam, medium for performing all the dharmas. But what is sarir? Sarir is not. It should not be looked only as a physical body. So when you look at this sarir, when you look at a human being as an entity with a body, mind, and a spirit, then the intervention that is needed, and to a large extent which is provided by various traditional medicine systems, and the approach would not necessarily be the approach that you take when you take as a pure matter, as a pure physical object, and as a simple chemical reaction. Now, often, our people often, when I say our people, means people from the traditional system of medicines, based on experience, they give the medicine. And many times it works, sometimes it may or may not work. But that is the case with all system of medicines. But the demand that is made by the modern science that you must prove it in laboratory, I think that laboratory has to be something different than laboratory as it is assumed and presumed by the modern science. How to create that framework? How to create the framework for validating what traditional system of medicine is doing? Many a times you do in the laboratory and try to find out, I'm giving this herb because this herb has got this particular chemical and this particular chemical works. This is one way. This again, it is okay. But again, we are pursuing the same, the fundamentals is the same. You are trying to prove it by the means by which the modern science that looks at the world as a physical object and the body as a physical body by the same logic. I think it is, I'm just posing a question. I don't have an answer. I'm posing a question to the experts. That when you are trying to prove that this medicine works by the same logic that yes, because this particular herb has this particular chemical and it works in the such and such, maybe in the cancer, maybe in the blood pressure, maybe in something. You are following the rules of the game, if I call it game, of modern science, which treats the whole world as a physical world. Whereas we know that, let's take off all these Siddha, Yoga, all these. You look we all look into this as a much more than a physical world, a physical manifestation or physical object. So the framework for validating also has to be something different. We are now today we are, and to some extent we can also say that one of the side effects of the COVID has been that now there is a greater acceptance for Ayush. When the Prime Minister gave it a boost by inviting and incorporating, because after all, we know that every science has a limitation, every discipline has a limitation. And to maximize the benefit for humanity, when we started using different, this different kashayams, different formulas of the churans and all, and it started working. And thanks to that, today, our Ayush market is almost, last year data it was 1,90,000 crore. Is almost $23-24 billion. Our export, Ayush export has exceeded $15,000. Is almost $2 billion. It is now there is a greater acceptance of Ayush. While the greater acceptance, I think a still greater acceptance there will be, because it works. But I personally feel I still urge the experts to work on more on the framework in which to tell the world how it works. When you go to a yoga teacher doesn't tell you that pressure work this way, that pressure is big. When you do meditation, it is not easy to explain it how meditation works. But to understand how meditation works, one has to go deep into its philosophy, if we call the word philosophy. How? Because you are not looking at as a human being as a physical object or a physical body, but much more than that. And it is a challenge, but nevertheless, this challenge has to be addressed. Otherwise, yes, a call came. Dr. Meera gave a call, let us unite. Good. After all, you have to unite. This is how it works. But then you have also to have, when we say scientific, you have to have a creative framework by which, because modern mind is curious. Today, people would like to know the reason why is it working and how is it working. This how and why, you cannot explain it by using the same, because modern mind has been tuned largely by the modern science. We know, and how this modern science or modern approach to science, I should say, it developed in about 16th, 17th century. It developed when that was called the age of enlightenment. They called it an age of reason. And it came out of a very political conflict between the church and the state. When the church was intruded into the domain of the king wanted to restrain the church. And so a number of intellectuals came up writing, whatever stands to reason accepted, because faith is not subject to reason. So questioning the faith, you can only do it when you can question it when you have reason. So reason became dominant. And modern science, of course, you give explanation how the gravity works, how the thermodynamics of heat and all you work. You start explaining it very scientific terms, everything to reason. But we know that the reason is able to explain only the physical world. Reason can only explain what happens in the physical world. And when a human body is more than a physical entity, the reason has a limitation. I do not know what I'm saying, how much sense it is making to all of you, but I'm sure many of you are trying to pick it up because I have my own problem in articulating it. Because you cannot validate by your discipline using the rules of games of the other. Because that rules of game does not accept a spirit and mind. It accepts it as a physical object. You have to create a framework. And it needs a deep research. I'm sure Ayush will continue growing. And today, yoga is an international phenomenon all over the world. Because we also realize that treatment of an ailment is not necessarily the happiest thing. Why should the ailment come? Preventive part of it. When you are holistically, when you, that's why we talk about well-being. It's not just treatment. And all the traditional system of medicine have worked on the well-being. So, we have to do a lot of, I think the experts need to sit together. They need to work out the fundamental postulates, fundamental principles, how you are going to explain how it works. Because modern mind will keep asking questions, you cannot evade that. You cannot say that because it has worked, so I am working. It could have worked, but it may not. Because no medicine works for everyone. We know that even in modern medicine, some medicine works for a patient A, it does not work for patient B. Because individual variations happen. But they have a system of argument. They have a system of logic. That is how they try to explain you. They are using the laws of the physical world. This is the chemistry. This is how reaction. This is how it is. When you talk about the body, human body, sariram, which is physical and mind and spirit all, then it has to have its own fundamentals, its own logic, its own argument. And those have to be as intelligibly and as clearly spelled out and defined. I know it can be a time-taking process, but there has to be a beginning. Modern science did not emerge in a day, but a beginning happened some centuries ago. Similarly, a beginning has to be made. And we, at a time when our country, this is the most opportune time. Our Prime Minister often says, "Idu neram shariyana neram." This is yahi samay hai, sahi samay. This is the time when India is now emerging in the world with its own identity. India is not just emerging in the field of science and technology. It's also resurging in its traditional values. That is why every time Prime Minister talks, he talks about our heritage. We must be proud of our heritage, and this traditional system of medicine is our heritage. Some of it originated elsewhere, as you say, Unani and homeopathy. But we absorbed it. It is ours now. Because this has been the beauty of this country, that whoever, from wherever they came, we absorbed, we assimilated. So it is now ours. So, when India is emerging as a hope to the world, and hope to the world to solve the world's crisis, the crisis of health and well-being is going to be one of the major crises. We have seen how it happened in pandemic. Something can happen tomorrow. So, while we are growing in modern science and technology, we also must grow in our traditional knowledge system, including our traditional medicines. Traditional system of medicine, I should say. I'm very happy to have this assembly. We have been thinking of it for quite some time. I am thankful to you for making it possible, for coming over, gracing the occasion. And I wish all of you the very best. I wish our traditional system of medicine the very best. Because we say that when the country is rising with its own identity, if we remove this, our identity is impaired. It is not a full identity. It is for the sake of ourselves and for the sake of the world that the traditional system of medicine must grow and must grow robustly. And for that, we need to create the good scientific outlook. Scientific outlook is not exactly what the modern science tells you. Science, that and scientific outlook is different. We have to go to do all this. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. We now request Dr. G. Meera Sudhir of Jnanavarshini Trust to propose the vote of thanks.
இந்த நாள் ரொம்ப இனிய நாளாக அமைஞ்சிருக்கு. எங்களுடைய மனமார்ந்த நன்றிகளை திரு ஆளுநர் எக்ஸலன்சி கவர்னர் ரவிஜிக்கு நாங்கள் எல்லாரும் ஞானவர்ஷினி ட்ரஸ்ட் சார்பாகவும் ஆயுர்வேதா யுனானி சித்தா ஹோமியோபதி நேச்சுரோபதி டாக்டர் சார்பாகவும் தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறோம். இந்த ஃபங்க்ஷன் will not end without thanking our honorable CM and our honorable health minister Masu sir who are taking all efforts to address the issues which are floating among the Ayush community. ஸோ நம்மளுடைய யுனானி டாக்டர் திரு அமீன் சொன்ன மாதிரி வி நீட் சீக்கிரமாக ஒரு யூனிவர்சிட்டிக்கான சொல்யூஷன். ஒரு யூனிவர்சிட்டி எதுக்குங்க? ஒரு யூனிவர்சிட்டினா தானே பிரச்சனை. 5 யூனிவர்சிட்டி போட்டுடலாமே. ஃபண்டு நிறையா வேணும். 80% ஆஃப் த பாப்புலேஷன் இன் இந்தியா இஸ் ஃபாலோயிங் ஆயுஷ் மெடிசன்ஸ்னா 1 யூனிவர்சிட்டி இஸ் நாட் இனஃப் ஃபார் தமிழ்நாடு. இட்ஸ் பீன் 70 years since we got independence. We need 5 universities. We will all work together, Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, Homeopathy, Yoga and Naturopathy.